Great experiences don't build themselves.
Behind every personalized journey is complexity, tools, teams, and tech.
AI moves fast. Expectations move faster.
Adobe Experience Cloud offers the power, but strategy turns potential into performance.
This is Off the Grid with Brandy.
Subscribe, align your stack, accelerate your enterprise. You're listening to Off the Grid with Brandy, the podcast that turns enterprise chaos into clarity. We decode technology with insights from industry leaders and experts at AM Analytics Consulting. Let's dive in.
Yes, so welcome, Surya, right? We are on AM and Analytics podcast. So we're going to start off by going through a few questions, right? And the podcast is called Off the Grid with Brandy because we're not at work, right? We are in relaxed mode, and we are going to talk about tech and artificial intelligence. Also, of course, UX, UI design, and just talk about all of the things that we techie people love to talk about. Okay?
Absolutely. Love it. That's good.
Do you want to give a short description of yourself and a little bit about your path?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm Surya Jayaraman. I've been in the UX field for almost 20 years now. One more month, it'll be 20 years. My background is in human-computer interaction from Clemson, and I've worked in companies big and small, from startups to all the way to big, EY like conglomerates. My latest stop is with Guidewire. I lead the user experience team there, and here I am.
Okay, great. Well, let's dive in, right? So we can kind of get started. So our first topic, what we're going to talk about is the rise of AI in UX, right? Is it more of a tool or a threat? So what I wanted to know is, do you think that AI is currently replacing or augmenting UX, teams or, processes or procedures?
Yep, I'm glad you're diving in right now. Love it. I totally deny that it is replacing UX designers. It is
I agree.
Not just UX designers, like any product managers, anybody, right? Like, so it is definitely augmenting folks who know how to use AI, right? Like the trick is how to make it work for you. It is definitely not replacing them. Think of it as like a calculator. Like when a mathematician used a calculator, it didn't replace a mathematician. The calculator made it more efficient, more easy for him or her to solve the problems more efficiently. I think that's how I look at it. Like the AI is going to help in whichever field you are, make yourself more efficient, more, you can deliver more, you can answer more questions spend more time on the things that you want to spend on and do the menial tasks and grunt work, if you will, all that to AI. And it is not just making something, the AI is not just doing something for the sake of doing and giving you an answer. It is actually doing good work in that. So trust AI, give that to that. But the human element of it, I don't think it's going away.
I totally agree. I think that from two technologists, people, right? We don't believe, because I don't believe it's replacing AI. And I think I would like to kind of get that maybe concept out there so that people can feel more comfortable with artificial intelligence and also comfortable with the direction of what we're naturally moving into, right? So It's not about replacing, but it is about helping. It's like an assistant, right? That will allow for a lot of more easier flows.
Yep. It's especially for the UXers, it's like your creative accelerator, right? Like you use that to make your job easier, faster, efficient, and, deliver more.
Yeah. And I think people should start to look at it like that. So AI is not the end of the world, people. But it is the beginning of new trends. I think what people do, and they should look for, though, is what opportunities that allow them to enhance their skill set and being able to really kind of grow into those newer skill sets, right? And it can kind of push forward, right? Into now it can really start almost very different, beautiful careers for people that can look the same, but it can have a different face to it,
Exactly. Yeah, it's a different era. I know industry. I don't want to go too much into history, but industrial revolution changed way people work. People made things, right? Like an internet changed things, how people used to interact with each other. And initially, it was more like you are chatting with other friends and you are emailing and things like that. But it became ubiquitous that internet is part of your life. Similarly, AI will take that step eventually. So your
Yeah.
job is not going to change. It's going to shift. The way you deliver, the way you work is going to shift. But it's a new way of doing things. Just learn it.
Yeah, I agree. So I guess we'll kind of get into the next question then. What's your perspective on integrating like LLMs into the design workflows? Do
Yeah.
you, yeah.
A fun question, right? Like, so um, designing, I mean, I'll take that into multiple facets. So
Okay.
basically, designing using AI, yes, it is a big thing now. There are a bunch of tools out there, and you every week there is something new. I mean, as
Yeah.
with AI, like every week with design, like now the latest, Figma Make, Magic Frames,
Yeah.
Lovable has been there for some time now, and there are so many things that a Google Stitch came out. You, as a designer, you use that to create your prototype, your first step. Your first step is now a lot quicker than ever
Yeah.
before, right? Like,
Yeah.
so that's definitely one. But my aspect of it is like, okay, using AI to design stuff is one, but there will be a need, or there will be much more need in the area of actually designing the AI apps, right?
Yeah.
Like, so when you think of it, everything is chat-based interface now. Like, you're chatting and doing stuff. So yes, you have to look at that. So if you think of the overall designing for AI, then designing using AI, so that's the first part of the question. So
Yeah.
I'm just diverging into another aspect.
Yeah.
Designing for AI, you need to think of the overall user experience, obviously. Like, so how is that interface going to be? Like, is it a chat-based interface? It's a multimodal interface, things like that. So for that, you need, user UX folks to understand the users, be more of a collaborative assistant than, just an order taker and things like that. So that's one aspect. The second aspect is like actually designing the APIs itself, right? Like,
Yeah.
so I was telling you earlier, like my background is in human computer interaction, but I feel like it will be computer computer interaction in the future, or agent agent interaction, if you will. So the designers need to go in and figure out, okay, how are the APIs cohesive? Are they well named? Are they semantically rich? Are
Yeah.
they, talking to each agent properly so
There you
that
go.
it provides the actual results for the users? So that's another aspect of it, like designing for APIs, designing for AI, but not as an interface level, but behind the curtain. What do you look at it? How does a UX designer design an API? Like, I think that those people are already doing it, but it is going to explode in the future. Then the third aspect is like making the model itself like really smarter. Like, how do you make it smarter? Like, you train them. How do you train them? Like, if is it easy for folks to provide feedback? Are we collecting actual feedback? Like, there is no, removing bias from the feedback, things like that. So I feel like using AI for designing is one, which is, as I said, like there are a bunch of tools out there, but designing for AI is going to be much more, and it's going to, explode and proliferate as all these new applications comes into play. So generative AI is the first one, but I feel like agentic AI is going to take over.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I think once from a development standpoint, because I'm a developer by trade, right?
Mhm.
You have to understand the true aspects of being able to work from it in any aspect of being a developer. And how do you start to connect all of the different agents to be able to work together cohesively to really get the output that you want? And on projects that like we've worked on, it is. It's a process, right? And it's going to be a nice aspect of integrating all of those different parts so that you can really either have a super agent, right? Because I think that's what most people are doing, right? They're just connecting a lot of different agents to be able to create the agent that they want.
Yep.
And I think people need to understand it from that perspective, from design and development.
Yep. When you think of it like, okay, what is the user intent here? How do we map that to, natural language
Yeah.
intent to an agentic API? What are the interaction patterns? How are we, so gracefully degrading the issues and showing the errors properly? And how do we build the guardrails and constraints? All
Yeah.
that will fall under the UX side of
Yeah.
things, and that's
Mhm.
the part that I'm super excited about.
Yeah, and I think you said something that was really major before is also you have to be able to kind of like any of the false truths, right? Which has been something that has been alarming, right? That how do you start to also programmatically be able to, look at those false truths and make sure that they're not a part of your whatever your development structure is, right? Or whatever you're putting out to your clients. And that's something that I think regulatory is going to have to be a major part of not just how you develop, but also how are you keeping some regulatory guards around the information so that you're not just putting out a lot of,
Totally.
you know.
And how do you explain that to the user, right? Like the transparency part of it, like, that's where I guess UX folks comes in to play. Like, how do you make sense? How do you explain it so that the user doesn't get confused too much? I mean, already they are like with all these agents running around, as you said, like super agents and all that. Like, how do you make something very simple for the user to understand? The explainability aspect of it, I guess that's going to be big, and the transparency, the guardrails and the patterns, all those things are going to be huge as as we go forward with UX.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, it's gonna be an interesting kind of future and past. We are excited to see what that looks like. Do you have any like real examples of how like you've used AI assistant in regards to like AI assistant research or any prototyping or any journaling?
Yeah.
Is that something that you guys are currently kind of doing, or is that something you've worked on?
Yes. So we picked out AI a long time back. I know it's funny to say like 2 years back is long time in AI, right? We were at our offsite, and one of our major ask was like, how do we make AI for our employees, right? Like, how do we make use of AI for our employees? So we started out building a ChatGPT version internally using their API. So even before ChatGPT came out with all their features, we used their APIs to build analyzing a file, analyzing, various things like. So we started primarily on the research side. I think that's the number one thing: summarization, categorization. It's easy for folks to understand. So whenever we have the survey results and other things, like we use that, and the surveys are a lot quicker and a lot faster and makes much more sense than doing it over the days, over the weeks, right? Like, so research was number one for us, like the AI usage wise. Then now we are getting into the design side, as I said, like the design tools are exploding and changing every week. So we haven't gotten into that much of a tool, AI tools as much, but on the design side, we started primarily on building our own GPT. We started using, integrating our internal features, and we also brought in a company called Glean. Glean is our search tool and also our AI tool now.
Nice.
It has completely changed the way our employees work using AI.
Nice. I think that's it. Like, once you have a good kind of stable model and, a good organization that you kind of work with, then that's golden, right? Because like you said, I think organizations, when we look at it from the perspective of, one, does your team really have the time and focus, right, to be able to focus in on this extra thing? Are people, I've ran teams before and people are like, what? You want me to do more research? You want me to read about this? No, I don't want to. So it can kind of be like this kind of toe and pull, and to have somebody else at least, and then also too for organizations, people who are interested, right, to be able to do that research and want to kind of get into the nitty gritty of it. That is a diamond in the rough, but I think it's beautiful, right? And I think what I always try to empower teams to say is like, look, it's good to have but you also, at least from even if somebody or they're integrating their system into your system, you also have to have a kind of at least initial where you can say like, okay, I understand enough. So once it's integrated, now organizations can either take over or it can be an added plus, but research initially from the company and organization standpoint, and also from a provider, are so important, because if you don't have that to where companies are educated about what they're actually receiving, then people can just spend and end up spending a lot of money on nothing.
Yeah. So I think you touched on a few things. Like for us, the number one was education, right? Like, so just to get people excited and you start using it, we started collecting the use cases. It was like company-wide initiative, like people started putting in whatever use case that they could think of. Even within our organization, we did that. And then we started prioritizing, okay, this is something that we can do and we started building POCs and created videos and enablement materials and showcase to folks. And we created, internal pages and other things, FAQs to how to use AI, how not to use AI, all that kind of stuff. So that helped create that initial visibility and awareness for folks. Then we brought in, we were building POCs and prototypes. Then we brought in Glean. At that point, it became a lot more natural to our users, our employees' daily life, right? Like searching and then summarizing things and finding systems and all that kind of stuff became a lot more easier, and it's easy for them to adapt after that point. So that
I
initial education piece, training piece was a lot more important, and then it took automatically it took its own shape after that.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. That's the great thing about it. So if we talk about like turning customer feedback, right, into AI enhancements and designs, right? Meaning like voice of customers, voice of algorithms.
Mhm.
How do you think AI tools interpret like voice of the customer, right? Or how do you think how do you think is currently interpreting the voice of the customer, and do you think that it is capturing it,
Yeah. I think when you think of the voice of the customer, the primary ways for many organizations is to collect feedback through surveys,
Yeah.
right? Like so, UX organizations, we go into a different level with usability testing and other types of feedback mechanisms. But if you think of surveys, we have like any survey, if you think of it, will have like, multiple choice answer questions, like,
Yeah.
agree, strongly disagree, those kind of questions. And there are also open-ended questions. So the way we used to get results out of it, the multiple choice questions, you immediately get the answer. Like, okay,
Yeah.
we surveyed 2,000 users, 5% strongly disagree, 10% agrees, and all that. Now, if you imagine the same power to the open-ended questions as well, because
Yeah.
with AI, with all these LLM processing, you can get the similar feedback. Okay, these are our top 10 top 10 takeaways from this quarterly survey, or these are our main issues people are focusing on, or this is our sentiment analysis. These are our ways that people are liking our product, not liking our product, all those kind of details. Again, it went from 2 through 3 weeks of analysis to
Yeah.
hours. So I think
Uh-huh.
that's a huge thing for voice of the customer, right? Like, so you can interpret a similar way that you used to do with those kind of survey questions with the open-ended questions as well. Like it's on the same scale. It is not different. It can be very dynamic.
Yeah.
As the user enters information, as your survey respondents answer questions, you get the feedback right away. You don't
Yeah.
have to wait. There is no gap. So this dynamic aspect of it, I think that is huge in VOC.
Yeah. And I think after a while, you can start to like look at the questions, right? Data mine and kind of figure out, are these the questions, and really artificial intelligence, well, right? Are these the constant questions that we should ask, right? What are we getting more from customers or less from customers? Rephrase that now, right? And be able to get things out more efficiently. And now, you could analyze open-ended feedback and some of your social media comments. And you can start to gather from like, again, like your social media, from surveys, and now instead of somebody looking through all that information physically, it can say, hey, your social media said that the customer is like, do you like green water? And
Yeah.
now it allows for a lot more, it allows for the customers to be heard, right? And now they can see if it's a question that consistently comes up. Now it's a part of the survey, so we can ensure success across the board for customers.
Yeah, easily. I think the dynamic aspect of it is where it makes more sense. Really, you can adjust the surveys on the fly. You can
Yeah.
identify the patterns quickly than ever before, and you don't have to wait for a quarterly survey to end for you to start. Usually, like you send a quarterly survey, you get feedback, analyze, then you wait for the next quarter to change. You add a new survey question or something
Yeah.
like that, right? Like now it's all dynamic. Like you can mix it up, change things. You've already identified a key pattern. You don't have to ask the same question again. You can ask new questions to the users and figure out something new, right? Like so new
Yeah.
insights comes out of it. So I think it is definitely a big field for AI in the VOC side of things.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. How are your teams designing some of the interfaces that allow them to be able to learn like customer behaviors? Like what type of user interfaces, right, are they creating within that?
Yeah. So I've always been a user feedback advocate. Like,
Yeah.
even back in the days when we were doing web applications, other things, like there should be a quick and easy way for the users to provide feedback. Like,
Yeah.
we used to click a feedback button and it opens up a simple text box that sends out, the user can type in whatever they want and it comes to the product team. That's how we used to gather feedback. And in the AI world, I think it makes much more pertinent that you need to do that, not just, so the users are part of making the model smarter. I think that we talked about collecting data and having easy ways for folks to submit data, submit feedback, all that kind of stuff. So right now we do have simple thumbs up, thumbs down within our any chat interactions and other things. But we also have other ways to collect feedback, directly from our customers, and that, from our employees, and that we use to train the model again, change the stuff, provide a new feedback, new answer, and see whether that sticks, and update based on that. Like we have a help desk bot we built on Slack that does that. Like, so, okay, I've tried to answer this question to the customer. They are not saying this is working. So how do we make that better in the next round? So we work with the engineers to make sure, like, okay, maybe these are things that people are asking that's not matching. Let's try to make it more smarter. So I think bringing the feedback in and making the model smarter, making the responses smarter, that's how we've been doing it here.
Yeah. I think I agree. I think like creating the interfaces and how it interfaces that evolves, right, based off the user interaction, to your point, right? You just get to be more interactive in that whole process. So I completely agree with like that process and understanding the patterns, understanding, the content, the layouts, all of that, then you can be able to enhance even more. And I think that's what we're in right now. We're in that era of just like true enhancement, what that looks like and how fun it's going to be, right? Exactly. Yeah, definitely. So when I wanted to know too, like in regards to like data, right? When does data speak louder, right? Than kind of like these more so when does data speak louder, right? Just in general. Versus like us understanding what the customer kind of profiles are and things of that. Like, how do we make sure that data is not over speaking and over taking over the world?
I think that's an universal question. I think for data, it helps in a way that it beats the assumptions. You have certain assumptions about an archetype or persona. It is beating that by actual data, so you cannot argue against it. But where the personas and archetypes comes into play is the empathetic side of things, right? Like, so the data can only provide you information about what, but the why side of things, why the user is answering this way, why is the user clicking on a button that you're not supposed to click and expect something else, all those why aspect of it, it only comes from the personas and the archetypes, and what are their goals, like why are they even here in our system, what are they trying to do, how often do they use our system. We all assume that just because we build a software product, our users are day in and day out within using our product, but that's not the case. It could be like 10 minutes a week, 10 minutes a day. So we should be making it simple and things like that. So the data won't give you that level of detail or that kind of information or insight. But definitely data helps with the overall assumptions, beating out the assumptions, making clear patterns, all those kind of stuff. But the empathetic side of things only comes from the persona side.
Yeah. I was a data analyst at some point in my career, not now, years ago. But, data is king, right? Data does allow for us to actually know what people are doing, right? And I was also a web analyst, right? At some point in my career, right? So you're able to say like, okay, these are how many people are coming to our sites. These are how many people are leaving. What kind of funnels can we create so we can consume and make sure we create as much as we need to keep, our clients coming back, right? So data is that. And I think people for years, you imagine people were having this same conversation about AI, about data and web analytics almost like 7 or 8 or 9 years ago. People were scared of web analytics. When you talked about Adobe Analytics and bringing these systems in, people were like, no, we want to keep looking up stuff manually. Like, what? No, this is easy. So, I think when you are building out these customer personas, right, and you are building out, you have data to be able to understand exactly what customers are doing, but you have the personas to understand directionally how you can start to lead your clients and also connectability, like with those clients, right, or connection with those clients. So I think that data's there, but also you have to have the human aspect of understanding the personas for success.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So we want to talk about leadership, right? Like being a leader in the UX. So from UX leadership and scaling, managing cross-functional teams, it can be a lot. Like I've managed teams in all over the world, and it can be a lot. So when you start to have UX without like borders, right? And leading remote teams, right? And also distributing all of the digital teams and making sure that they all have enough work. What are some of the best practices for some of the remote UX collaborations, and to make sure, right, that they're on time, making sure they get stuff done, and you're not babysitting them? No, I'm joking. All right, you don't want to babysit any of your engineers, but you're not at a. But how do you ensure that people are on time and on schedule with their or their duties that they're assigned?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's always been three things. Like one is trust. You have to trust your team.
I agree.
I think that's your number one thing. Even with when I'm interviewing folks or when I'm speaking to folks, like that's the number one thing that you look for. Can I trust this person? Can I, is this person authentic for me to work with and all that, right? Like so, trust. Cadence. You need to have regular cadence. You need, for a remote team to work, you need to have a specific way that the whole team works. Everybody understands that cadence. Everybody knows what to deliver at what point. And clarity, like, in clarity in terms of like, okay, for me, the way I always tell my teams is like, as long as you meet the deadline and the quality of the product is good, I don't care whether you work 4 hours or 40 hours each week. It's up to you. You manage your own schedule. You do stuff. I trust you as an adult, and I'm not going to babysit 9 to 5 every day. It's up to you to manage. If you have, kid stuff, you have other stuff to take care of during the day, please feel free. If you want to take a nap, do that. If that helps, right?
Yeah.
So, for me, trust, clarity, and cadence are the main things. So in how we have always done is like make use of the tools. My boss, like from decades ago, that was his number one thing. There are so many tools out there, even 20 years, 15 years back. You make use of it. When I was working remote at that point, like our hybrid at that point, he was always telling my team or our teams that, use the tools that are at your disposal. At that time, we had not even Skype. There was something before Skype from Microsoft. I'm forgetting the name. Link, I think it was called Link. Microsoft Link. That was a big thing, like, collaborate asynchronously, provide feedback, so right now we do that, like asynchronous collaboration, make use of all the tools that are at your disposal, and, be kind and be nice so that you understand each other's day and time of the day and you work through that. It's not like, you have to have a rigid schedule. You have to work through that. But at the end of the day, you have to still deliver. You have to deliver quality attribute, quality aspects of your design or research or enablement, whatever you're supposed to do.
Yeah, I've managed a few teams in a lot of different time zones and countries, and I think the one thing that I've always said is like, look, to your point, right? I think clarity is extremely important. You have to be able to allow your team to understand exactly what the goal is, but I think not just from a goal, from a perspective of like, hey, here's what this is what the landscape is, or this is what the project plan is for the next, 6 months to a year. They get that. What I think I always emphasize on too is like company culture, right? And, that is also big, so I am a big proponent of like, hey, no, like, I'm not about to like work you to death. Like, no, you have some good work-life balance. It's your husband's birthday? No, you go and take him to dinner. Like, what are you doing? Don't sit around here, because if whatever your outer work looks like in regards to your home life, right, it's very showing in your real life, and into your work life and every other aspect, right? So, clarity, respect, and that what comes into respect for me is respecting people's times, respecting their professional boundaries, right? Especially again, when you're managing so many different people in so many different locations, you have to be able to respectfully be able to understand everybody has a different story, and everybody has a different, line that they're, lines of communication, how you communicate with people. So those have been some things that have been super important for me for leadership, is making sure that I understand how to communicate with people as a manager, so I don't come across too crass, or I don't come across like not the nicest person, right? Making sure I define things clearly, but not just what it is for project plan work, but also what is it is for anything outside of that, so we can kind of keep the company culture going.
Yeah. And I'm one of the, well, I was telling my team just recently, one of my favorite meetings I used to have, or I still have, is just chat sessions. The meeting is called Just Chat. It's just about chatting about anything, right? Like the movie you watched, your kid's soccer game or football game, whatever you want to chat about. That brings people together, from various cultures. Like they might have a celebration the past weekend, which the folks from the West, or they were completely unaware of. Like, so that brings them closer. That's the number one thing. Like, once you start trusting people, once you get to know them a little bit better, the work automatically happens. The deliverables automatically magically happen. So I feel like that's the number one thing.
I agree. So in regards to like tools, right? Tools or rituals that keep a global team aligned, what are some of the things that, that allow for that alignment?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, everybody has moved to Figma. If you're in the design field, everything is Figma in the past 5 years, I would say. We started out, I started out as an Adobe Photoshop guy for wireframes, which is very funny to say, but I used to use Photoshop for my wireframes. Then there were a bunch of other tools, but I think with Figma, it has standardized the overall ways that the UX designers work. So Figma is our number one tool for async, I mean, for designing, obviously, but also async collaboration, design side of things, all Figma. We use Miro, we've used FigJam, we've used Zoom Whiteboard for any of the whiteboarding sessions. I mean, Confluence as a whiteboard as well. Like for design thinking workshops, research, synthesizing research, bringing in nodes, and a collaborative session where people are moving around sticky notes and things like that. We always used any of these whiteboarding tools. And then obviously there is Slack for us to async collaboration. That's the best. You can use leave notes, leave questions and comments, and people, whenever they are back on, they can answer the questions. Same with Figma, like you can answer that within Figma and get notified in Slack and other places. So Figma, whiteboarding tools, like any of these whiteboarding tools, Miro is pretty good. FigJam is amazing as well. Then any of these, Slack and other async tools. But there are other tools as well.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, there are, there's Notion, there's Loom, there are other tools out there which we haven't, we have used it, but not to that extent yet.
Yeah, I love Loom and I love Figma, right? So Figma has always, because I work being a developer, right? We work hand in hand with the designer. So, we are also in constant collaboration, but Loom allows at least for you to kind of tape things, and you got to set it off and be like, look, this is how you kind of go through it. Don't ask me any questions enough.
I think that's right.
And that's one thing that we started to incorporate, especially on the development side. We started doing Looms with any of like, so we won't have to go to the QA team as much, right? Or the QA team doesn't have to come to us as much, because how I interpret something can be completely different from someone else. So like, no, here's a Loom video. If you have any questions after this, then let's have a collaborative conversation. But I agree, Figma has been a life changer, especially looking through it. And I've seen our designers just be able to go to leaps and paths with, utilizing Figma correctly, right? But then also, again, like we've used like Slack too. So those are all very great tools. I agree with you.
And we have used Zoom as well for the exact same thing that you were describing. Like just screen record, annotate, or do a voiceover where just do a meeting with yourself and screen record and share it with whatever team that you need to share it with. That has served that purpose as well. And obviously, apart from the tools, then there is the stand-ups and design critiques, and your regular weekly meetings or one-on-ones. Those all help definitely set up that cadence and also deliver on the timely manner.
I agree. So, are there any tales from working from a Fortune 500, working for at a Fortune 500 company? Any projects in regards to scaling up in regards to UX operations, what are the scary tales that no one wants to talk about now?
I think I know the way, I mean, especially from the UX side of things, we always wanted to be strategic. We always want to have a seat at the table. I don't believe it is there yet. I mean, I might be, I might not be popular saying that, but it is still, you are into the execution, you are given tasks and you're working on it. I mean, there are definitely organizations which embrace UX quite a bit, but there are not, I mean, many fall on the other side. So for me, the design ops helps with setting up your boundaries, setting up how the design teams work. What can you expect from a design team? How would they engage with the rest of the product management team or engineering or program management? How would they engage with us, right? Like so, when you set up the design ops, design system is number one for me, right? Like so, design system has helped set up that cohesive experience that we were missing before. Pre-design system days, like everybody, if you're supporting like multiple Scrum teams, each team will be developing their own component, and you have to reconcile with the component. It becomes a nightmare after a point. But with the design systems, it's easy for us to get behind each of those interactions, each of those components, and you don't have to worry about designing the components. You're worried about, as a design team, you're worried about designing the experience. So that has helped. Then staying one step ahead of development, that's one of the things from all my 20 years of experience. That's the number one, tale, like where the designers should stay one or two steps ahead of development. When development is working on design sprint 0, we should be working on sprint 1 the same way. Like they are working on sprint 1, the design team would be doing sprint 2. How do we do that? There are design sprints, sprint zeros, or design spikes where you do that initial upfront overall holistic thinking and come up with the design concepts that will fit everywhere, right? Like then you break it into chunks and get into each individual iterations or each individual sprints. But that overall initial thinking is very important for us to get it in the right direction. And it is not just the UX team. The development team and the engineering team and the product team has to provide actionable feedback on the designs. Like when we are showing designs for sprint 2, there shouldn't be, the engineering team should actually look at the designs, provide actual feedback, so that when they are in sprint 2, we are in sprint 3, right? Like we don't have time to revisit everything that we made. So there should be some iteration built in for design changes, but it shouldn't be too much where it is taking over your next sprint activities. Then you are in a bottleneck. That's the number one thing for a UX leader, to set up and set the expectations right at the beginning of the project itself.
Yeah, I agree. You said something great about like the product managers, right? And the product owners. First of all, let's give a shout out to the product owners, right? Because we really don't talk about the work that they kind of do behind the scenes, but how intricate they are to the team. Because if the product owner or the product manager, doesn't have all the requirements down, and if there is anything that is incomplete within that, then it can really determine the entire project, right? And then all of a sudden, now you have budget completely wasted because now your product manager had 50% of the requirements wrong. So like having strong product owners and product managers are essential to a team, because they kind of start the wheel off, right? So that they can, to your point, talk to the UX designer, say, hey, this is exactly what the client wants, but that doesn't subtract from your creativity, right? Developers, this is what we need, right? We need this. So it's a major part, I think, within any organization, just to have a really kind of strong, like built out in regards to especially leadership. It is, I think the only tell that I have would be there were any times that we didn't meet anything is past our sprint time, right? And now, all of a sudden we're going into like super like critical time, and then now it's panic time, that it's like, oh man, like we didn't get the requirement right? And not that happened a lot within my career. Usually I ensure that that's right. But there are times where, something may have been misinterpreted. And so now you have to kind of backtrack a little bit, and developers have to be innovative enough to be able to say like, hey, let me correct this, let me get it done, and let me get it out the door, right? So it's a big one, right? So
sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to add more to that. Like, the three pillars that needs to work together, like product, engineering, and design. right? Like, so you have to work together. Product obviously has like product managers, product owners, business analysts, like who comes up with the requirements, work with the actual customers and understand their requirements. And engineer, I mean, obviously designers, the research team is interfacing with them, and then taking that from that and passing on to the design team and passing on to the engineering team. And the program management team keeps a leash to make sure everybody is on time. We are delivering. We are actually doing things that we promised that we will deliver at a certain sprint and all that. So these three pillars managed by the program management team, I think that's the success of an.
Yeah, I think the program manager and the portfolio manager. The portfolio manager is the key that a lot of people don't talk about. But if you don't have a good portfolio manager who can kind of go through everything, it will definitely deter a lot of your projects tremendously. Yep. So we talk about some of the interfaces, right? And where we start to talk about AI meets these conversations, and we start to talk about chat boxes and voice of UX. How are you building out, right, some of your AI-driven customer support systems? Like you already talked about it, right? Like some of your chat boxes and some of your voice UIs. How are you building them out? Also, just to make sure, too, that, you're building them out correctly, and they can also, again, start to work with some of the aspects of, be able to work across all channels and ensure that they're implemented correctly.
Right. So, I mean, we have to design the systems around the customer, right? Like how it's day in the life of a customer, day in the life of an employee. How are they using our system? As I said earlier, like they may not be using our systems every day, or they could be, things like Slack and other things, they are using every day, every single day of the week. So, you have to design around their natural interactions and intuitive interactions, and then build on top of it. Voice-based interactions, as you covered, like, multimodal kind of interactions. This was back in 10 years back. I was part of a company where we were doing multimodal interaction chatbots. Nice. Like, user can type and also you use the voice to type and interact with the particular system. Like at that point, Alexa and Google had come into play, right? Like people are starting to use voice for playing music and things like that. And we were trying to build that for our customers. I think the biggest thing for us was making the transition seamless. Like, okay, from one model to the other, like if you're typing, you go to the other one, do you have is it easy for the user to jump from one to the other without losing context? I think respecting the context was the other biggest key. You want to make sure the user is not repeating themselves again and again to give you, just because I spoke to a chatbot on a system, and then I speak to an agent, or I speak to an automated agent on my phone, I have to repeat every single thing again. Like that's the context is key, right? And the third aspect is like you are giving them an out. They cannot like make sure you're controlling them. You are giving them for them to take things out. Like so, to answer your question, like how are we helping the support systems and other things? I think if you train it with the real customer data around their natural interactions and the way they interact with the system, voice, chat, other means like the overall modality, then you build that rich customer feedback into your system.
Yeah. And I think too, what people have to understand too is AI is a build, right? So you continue to get the voice of the customers. It continues to build off of that. And then it starts to create different scenarios that will align with customers, right? So the great thing is it's a build, right? It always continuously be able to take those voices and then now be able to ideally, right, be able to make it make more sense, right? Like even as you're chatting, because now when you look at certain chats, you're like, that's not even the question I asked. Like, what question did you get exactly? Because that's not it. So I think that's the thing, is to be able to have a great chat that actually answers real questions. You know.
Yeah. So I think those the context and making sure they are answering the right questions at the right time, not just because that shouldn't be answering questions.
All these false narratives that AI is creating, right? Mm-hmm. So what do you think some of the UX best practices in regards to these like platforms are, because we need best practices, right? If we don't have something where we have some best practices, then we end up all over the place. So what are some of the best
I
practices?
think, yeah, I touched on that earlier, like the graceful handoff between one channel to the other. Like, how would you hand it over? How are we passing the context? It was a big deal back in, 10 years back, but now with the chat-based interfaces, people are using it a lot more, and it saves the context for them. It is not like before where you're losing the context as much, but that graceful handoff between systems or between channels is number one. The context is key, and the way out for people to take control. I mean, I don't want AI to tell me what to do. I want to just press zero to actually reach out to a customer
Yeah.
agent than like, just going on a loop and not getting what you wanted, right? Like, so I think those are some of the best practices that we need to think of.
I agree. Best practices are going to be so important in regards to integrating into these new systems, because if we don't have it, it will, we won't have any alignment to ensure that we're always doing right by the customer and that we always are protecting our customers. And those are some of the most important things. So I totally agree with you, right? So we have one more question until we get to the fun part where we get to play a game with each other. But so the last question that I have, and thank you, you've been so great. All the answers are so great, right? So what's the future thinking of AI powered AR, AR and like VR interfaces in regards to enterprise tools? Like, how do we think this is going to kind of play out in regards to what we think about what the future looks like?
Yeah, it is. I mean, AR, VR is going to be huge, right? Like, think of it. I mean, I was recently part of a conference where we saw academic research and people are showing how it's being used. And one of the main thing was the healthcare industry, how the germs are being spread from one area to the other. The nurse is wearing the AR glasses and they can see what germs they are carrying from one area to the other. And then they get into more details of like, okay, is the germ really going to affect the patient? So how many times you need to wash your hands and things like that. So basically, it helps the walkthroughs. It helps the support. I think that is going to be huge for any of these like AR systems. We were having fun back in the day. My manager, when we first had iPhones back in the day, I was with a mapping company, and we had like so much demographic data. And one of the cool things that we were ideating, I mean, it never became a reality, but like if you hold a phone and view a street, it automatically gives like how many people live in that neighborhood, what is their median age, what's the income, if you have the data, right? Like, so it overlays on the map what kind of information you're looking at. And with another example with EY, when I was there, I was responsible for the conference rooms technology. Like, so you have a meeting coming up and you put the AR glasses or whatever the AR means is, it automatically lights up and shows you where your conference room is. And you walk up to your conference room and you have an Alexa or something sitting in the conference room. You go in, it recognizes you by voice or your eye tracking on the outside, and it automatically starts the meeting. It sets the room temperature, it closes the shades, all those kind of stuff. It becomes much more when you think of AR and VR combined with AI. I think it's going to be huge as we go forward, and there's much more enterprise use cases that will come up from training, walkthrough, inspections, all those, and instructions for getting onboarded. Like, how do you get onboarded to a particular workflow? It's easy to do with AR, and I think that's going to be the next big thing.
Yeah, I agree. Or the now thing, right?
Right, like,
yeah. I think it does allow for more, it allows it to be more intuitive, right? So we do see a level of it being more intuitive that we just can't even think about, and we can't even imagine, right? Because a lot of the use cases haven't even been developed yet. So right to your point, like when people get into more of the enterprise organizations and you're able to create more use cases, then it just starts to be bigger, right? So man, I know you almost, but hold on, we have one last thing, right? This is the fun part. This is our bonus segment, right? And the bonus segment is called like, what in the world would we do? Meaning you and I, right? So we are going to solve a problem together, only for 2 minutes, right? And then I'm going to put my timer on to keep me honest, right? So what in the world will we do? The question is, what in the world will we do if AI tools started designing faster than we can think? and how do we keep the UX human in this speedy world to make sure that they're equipped? Go, you go first.
I feel like there should be AI tool should be giving you confirmation on what it does, what it did, and whether it is okay for it to do, right? Like, so I think the speedy thing is good, all that, but you need human in the loop to, as we were talking about the guardrails earlier, like you don't want it to hallucinate and go in a different direction that you don't want. So you want there to be like consistent checkpoints within the overall experience where the human is saying, oh, yes, this is good, go forward, go forward. And after a time, maybe it learns and then it doesn't have to ask the user. So it has to show the anomalies, it has to raise the red flags and ask the user when needed, but also make a decision when so many people are saying yes, like maybe it's the right way to go. So I think that's how I think of it. What are your thoughts?
I think we put in our in the world kind of session before it blows up. No, but we have to put rail guards around it. We have to put checkpoints, but we can't put the checkpoints at every level. We have to have administrative rights so certain people can have that access and then be able to approve it and be able to go through, right? So before the tool kind of, to your point, it can go speedy, but speedy doesn't mean efficient. Speedy doesn't mean, we want to make sure that it's in alignment with the company's organization. So I'm in total agreement in regards to what you're saying, like have some rail guards there, have some check off points. Everybody can't be the check off person, right? But, you have those admin rights versus any other. So I think that's the best. That would be one step. We only have 2 minutes, so we can't go into all of the steps, but I think we're starting somewhere good.
Right. That's good.
All right, well, thank you. This has been great, right? We've had an opportunity to talk about UX. We did the What in the World challenge, right? And we had a really just great conversation overall. Any closing thoughts or anything closing you want to say?
No, this was fun. Yeah,
Okay.
Thanks for including me. And I think, it was good to chat it out and understand a little bit more about where each other's thoughts are in terms of where this whole AI behemoth is taking us, right? And I think it's good, like folks like us to speak it out and understand a little bit more because people are, I wouldn't say scared, but it is a little scary when you don't know how to use AI. I think the number one thing is embrace it, make it work for you. You are the master and you'll continue to be the master. Make use of it. I think that's where we are heading.
And AI is not taking over the world. No, but thank you very much for your time. I appreciate you. You have a great afternoon, right? Don't get too wet out here with the rain. I don't know if it's raining in your area.
Hearing all the rumblings in the back.
Yeah, I was wondering if you heard it too. I was like, oh man, it's coming. But thank you very much. You have a great afternoon, okay?
Thanks, Brandon.
All right, bye-bye.